Hey, this is Allison Berkowitz in Harford County, Maryland, and you're listening to Two Broads Talking Politics.
Are you la la listening?
Hi, everyone. This is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics. I am talking today with Kara Eastman, who is running for Congress in 2020 in the Nebraska 2nd District. Hi, Kara.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining me. So I'd love to start if you could just introduce yourself a little, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running for Congress.
Sure. Well, I'm born and raised in the Midwest. I've been living in Omaha for about 13 years. My background is in social work and really starting and growing nonprofit organizations. I've been in the nonprofit sector for about 20 years. I ran a children's environmental health organization in Omaha that I helped to start in 2006 for 13 years. And then in 2014, I ran for the Metropolitan Community College Board of Governors. It's an elected position for our community college, and won a position there. And so then in 2017, made the decision to run for Congress because of my mother's own health care bills. And she was prescribed a prescription that was outrageously expensive and ended up not being able to afford it. So I decided to run for Congress then. And then in 2018, I won the primary against a former congressperson he was the only Democratic incumbent to lose in Congress in 2016. And beat him by 3.3%. Was not necessarily slated to beat him, but did. And then lost the election in 2018 to the incumbent Republican just by 1.9%. So immediately after the election, had a bunch of conversations and looked at the data and just said, I've got to do it one more time. So I made the decision to run again and haven't looked back.
All right. So this district is an actual swing district. It actually does seem to go both ways. It's, I think, rated as R+4 right now, but that's pretty close. Can you tell us a little bit about the district and what you're hearing from the people on the ground there?
Sure. Well, it's an interesting district. We gave an electoral college vote to Obama in 2008, did not do that in 2012. So we split our electoral college votes. And as I mentioned, there was a Democrat who won in 2014, lost in 2016. Prior to that, we had a Republican holding the seat for CD2 for about 12 years. The district itself is, it's urban-suburban. It's 98% urban-suburban. And I think that's something that people don't necessarily know about Nebraska. In the 2018 election, I won Douglas County, where Omaha is, but lost the part of the county to the south of us, Sarpy County, it was a much more heavily Republican district. But what we're seeing is a real shift in the culture, especially in Omaha. I mean, Omaha is 12% African American, I think 12% Latino. We have the largest South Sudanese population outside of South Sudan. So we have a huge refugee population. We're an urban district. And we're seeing a cultural shift in the way that people vote. And I think that we're going to keep seeing that. The more the population grows, the more we have younger people moving into the city, the more that our LGBTQIA community expands. And we have issues just like any other urban area. We have substandard housing and too many people living in poverty and, fewer African Americans graduating from high school than any other large city in the country. So we have real issues that need to be tackled by a candidate who's going to stand up for them.
So you mentioned you weren't necessarily predicted to win the primary in 2018, and I remember it being, somewhat surprising, made national news. You're fairly progressive, and I think that's part of the main conversation Democrats are having right now. The tension and the challenge as we think about congressional races and the presidential race is, how progressive Democrats should be, how moderate they should be. Can you talk some about your values, your issues, and why you think that you've had this success as a fairly progressive candidate?
Sure. Well, the issues that I have been talking about since I started running in 2017 are widely supported by the majority of Americans. So most people favor universal background checks on guns, for example. I mean, at 90%, that's Republicans and Democrats. Raising minimum wage is very popular, polls at about 60%. Most people agree that the wealthy are given too many handouts in this country and that we need to level the playing field. So, and obviously we have to do something about health care. And there are a lot of great debates happening right now. I mean, last cycle, the debates around Medicare for all and single-payer health care and fixing the Affordable Care Act. And then on the Republican side, just the repealing of the ACA with no replacement in sight. The conversations were just getting started, and now we're having robust conversations about it, which I think is really exciting. I think it's great that the Democratic Party is moving back to be the party of ideas, whereas it seems that the Republican Party is the party of what? I can't say it without using things like sexism, racism, homophobia. So I'm excited to be running at a time where we're able to have these conversations, but I'm also listening to people in the district and hearing their concerns about the direction that the country is moving. And most people are telling me that they feel like our country is moving in the wrong direction, that we need new leadership.
The turnout in 2018 in your district was higher than normal for a midterm year. It was much closer to a presidential election year. Do you think that high turnout is going to continue in 2020? Did you get the sense from people that they were really excited to vote or anxious to vote, that voting was becoming something people were thinking much more about?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were very proud. We knocked on 200,000 doors in the district, and so we know that helped to increase turnout. And we heard from a lot of people then that they were excited to go out and vote, which is not necessarily something you hear people say. And so this time, I mean, it's funny, even the day after the election, I had people coming up to me saying, "Oh, I didn't vote because I just thought you had it." So, but I'll vote for you next time if you run again. So I do think that we will see a more significant increase in turnout. I think people are a bit more energized. And one of the things that we're working on is talking to groups nationally that are focused on voter turnout and making sure that we're going into the parts of our city where people don't traditionally vote, because they've just been left out of the process and they feel like their vote doesn't matter, and they feel like it doesn't matter who's in that office because they don't think anything will change. So we're going out and having those conversations.
You are a mom. We love when moms run for office. Can you talk some about what being a mom has brought to your worldview, to the kind of politician that you are?
Sure. Well, I have I was going to say 18-year-old daughter. She just turned 18, and she's about to go to college in the fall. And she's leaving Nebraska. She's going to Southern California and actually going to my alma mater, Pitzer College. You know, when I think back to when I had her, and the most significant conversation that my husband and I had about her was what we were going to do with her, because we were both working parents. And my husband's in academia, so he has a little bit more flexibility. But it's not, at that time, I've been working in nonprofit and didn't necessarily have a flexible, I didn't work from home and that was the conversation that we kept having, was how are we going to be able to stay home, raise our kid, afford childcare? What were were we weighing? Does one of us quit our job? Do we even get a job? Knowing that all of the money that one of us is making would be going for our daycare, because as academics and social workers, we don't necessarily make a ton of money. And I think that is a significant issue that so many people face. And as more and more women work, which obviously they do, that's one of the issues that I think we need to be tackling. It's so challenging for working parents. And I saw this in my own nonprofit. We had a woman who worked at the organization who was pregnant, and I actually had her create our family medical leave policy with the board, because I thought she's going to be more invested in this than anybody else at the time. And that's one of the things that we just need to make sure that we're creating policies that work for families these days, instead of moving backwards and living as if it's not the fact that both women and men and parents work.
The Republican incumbent in your district is not particularly friendly to climate change policies. Could you talk some about the way that climate change is affecting Nebraska and the kinds of things you would like to see the federal government doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, climate change is the number one moral issue that our kids are facing right now, because we're just leaving this for them to deal with. And we have to do something about it. In Nebraska, we've been impacted significantly by flooding, and it's really hurt our farming community. And I think that despite the fact that this district is an urban district, we rely heavily on agriculture for our food supply. I mean, 1 in 4 jobs in our state are related to our agricultural economy. And if we don't do something about this and we don't take some bold steps, I don't think that there's anything else for us to be talking about. Like we are seeing changes, obviously across the planet, but in particular in this district, that are impacting people in real ways. And I've spent a lot of time working in the district on energy efficiency in homes, and I think that is one way, and that's all part of an economic development plan that actually impacts climate change, but also has day-to-day impacts on people. So when they see that their utility bills are going down, because especially for people living in poverty, they're paying so much more of a percentage of their income on their utility bills than wealthier people, that's when you get the buy-in. And so we need to be focusing on local jobs that tie economic development and climate change together. And I think, that's a win-win, where if we go in and we replace windows and we increase the efficiency in people's homes, again, all those jobs are local, right? You can't outsource that to other countries. And we fix people's housing, which results in an increase in the tax base for those communities, decreased utility bills, and a significant way of actually impacting people's carbon footprint, which is really important. I believe we also need to be investing heavily in renewables, and I have some bold plans to get there. I mean, we're seeing this for presidential candidates too, but Nebraska could be a champion for wind and solar. And we need to be investing in those ways. I've also been fairly outspoken about being against the Keystone Pipeline, because I've seen the environmental impact that we've had here in Nebraska, where Omaha is actually the largest residential Superfund site in the nation because of lead contamination. And I worry about the environmental impact that things like pipelines have in communities.
You mentioned that your community has a refugee population. Could you talk some about the ways that the Trump administration policies are affecting the people in your community, and the ways that you would like Congress to stand up to that sort of thing?
Sure. Well, first, I mean, immediately, when Trump gets elected and imposes the Muslim ban, I mean, people here are afraid and angry, as they should be. And we need policies that do not discriminate against people of one culture or one religion. When it comes to immigration, what we've seen is now, we've had ICE raids in Nebraska, and we're seeing people who have lived here their whole lives who are afraid, people who are afraid to go out and vote, which is really scary, but also just to live their lives for fear of having their families further torn apart. And so it's like the policies that this administration has enacted and supported are some of the most immoral and despicable things that I think as Americans we've seen in our own country. And it's time for us to stand up against them and make sure that we are creating policies that work. It's the Republicans have commandeered this whole idea that Democrats are against border security, which is not true. But we have to invest in people. We have to invest in smart technology, and we have to reform our system so that we give dreamers a pathway to citizenship, and so that people can come to this country seeking refuge, because that's what America was built on.
Are there lessons that you think you've learned from your previous run that will help you this time around as you're running again for Congress?
Yeah, quite a few. It's funny. One of our field organizers says that last time was a trial run, and this is the race. We learned a lot. We learned a lot about our messaging. We learned a lot about our strategy. In our field effort, we learned. This time we know we have some data that we can go back to. We have IDs of people who voted for me. We know what concerns people have, and we also know that we need to do an even better job of going out and talking to people and making sure that they know who I am and what I stand for, because if you look at the last election, the Republicans spent $1.2 million attacking me personally, attacking me professionally, attacking even my daughter. And Democratic groups spent about $37,000 pointing out the bad voting record, which, the incumbent had. So that discrepancy in spending was huge. And so this time we know that we need people to come in and help us point out the incumbent's horrible voting record. Now that he's in the minority, his record, he's still aligning himself 95.3% of the time with Donald Trump and the Republicans. And he's simply just not representing this district. He claims to be bipartisan. But bipartisan is actually working with colleagues, not just voting with your own party all the time. And basically his, compromises. He talks about compromise, but for him it's compromising values. And I'm not going to do that. I believe that we need to work together, but right now we can't have somebody get in there and just vote with the Republicans all the time, because some of those policies are significantly harming people in this country.
I know that Nebraska doesn't usually get a whole lot of attention in the presidential elections, with the possible exception of Obama targeting the second district. But do you think the presidential candidates should be spending time in Nebraska? Do you think that the people in Nebraska want to feel like they're heard by those candidates?
I do, absolutely. I think that we've had maybe 2 visits from presidential candidates this time, and I imagine we'll see more, especially as things get closer and people look at that one electoral college vote that this district can give. But I think Nebraska has been overlooked in general by the party and by candidates that are running for president. So it's time for people to start taking us seriously. We're an incredible state with rich resources. And we do things, maybe to the beat of our own drum, which is a great thing about Nebraska. And so I hope that more candidates come here and actually talk to us. I think sometimes they go over across the river to Council Bluffs and think that that's enough. But we actually want people to come here and see what's going on here, because there's a lot of amazing things happening, in particular in Omaha where I live. Tech companies coming here, incredible advancements when it comes to some of the ways that we do things as a city. And there are a lot more Democrats here than people give us credit for.
If people would like to help out your campaign, what are some ways they can do that?
Well, we're always looking for people, especially locally, to come and knock doors with us, walk in parades with us, make phone calls. We've got some interesting field strategies this time. Our field director, Fatima, has been actually organizing an academy for volunteers to train them in not just working on the campaign, but also just in community organizing. So we have opportunities there as well. And we want to start bringing our canvassing out to neighborhoods rather than having people come to us. So people can always get involved locally. Obviously, candidates like me need donations. I do not take corporate PAC money, so I rely on those small dollar donations. And people can donate at eastmanforcongress.com. And even just following us online and on social media is really helpful, and just spreading the word that there's a progressive Democrat running in Nebraska who has a real shot at winning.
I love it. All right. We'll put links to your website and your social media up on our website so people can find you. I'm super excited that you're running again. I love the bold progressives running, and I wish you luck.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thanks for listening to Two Broads Talking Politics. Our theme song is called Are You Listening? Off of the album Elephant Shaped Trees by the band Immunuri, and we're using it with permission of the band. Our logo and other original artwork is by Matthew Wethlin and was created for use by this podcast.